the techniques and the skill sets that the foreign carpenters bring are different than what my native-born American carpenter has. They might do different jobs. Because they don't speak English well, my carpenter friend is the foreman, and the other carpenters, might do the parts of the work that don't require English skills. And so what happens is you also have not just more people, but people who kind of allocate into different roles in the economy.
It creates a sort of dynamism.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you another example. So imagine you're walking through your supermarket aisle and think of the things that you buy every day. If we start removing the foods that were introduced by immigrants just to Philadelphia, at least half of your cart would be empty.
Yep.
Right? Pasta.
Yeah.
Pierogies, sushi. I almost can't think of an American food that doesn't exist because newcomers brought it, right? And so all of a sudden, it's not that all these foods compete with each other. They just kind of broaden your palate, right? And so there's now room for restaurants and producers to offer all these kinds of foods.
All of that consumption stemming from immigration at some point along the way.
Exactly. And that's why it's not zero sum.
Yeah, it expands. And Zeke, I think about Philadelphia and how Philadelphia, the population here was stagnant for decades. And in, the early 2000s, we saw this influx of immigrants moving into this country. And for the first time in over a generation, we saw, population growth. Can you talk about how immigration helps take stagnant populations, stagnant economies, and the impact of this flux of new people, what it does for a city like a Philadelphia?
Yeah, exactly. So Philadelphia went from single digits in terms of the fraction of immigrants in the population to today about 15% of Philadelphia's population is foreign-born. And it's not a coincidence that has coincided with an economic renaissance of sorts for our city. Why? And this is where we go from talking about just the not negative to the why immigrants are positive economically. Immigrants are 80% more likely than natives to start a business. So when you get foreign-born people, they're starting new businesses, okay? Everything from the new corner restaurant or the corner store selling, remittances and calling cards to high-tech businesses like, look, we wouldn't be having this show were it not for immigrants, right? The microprocessors that make it possible for us to communicate, introduced to the U.S. largely by immigrants. If you had a Zoom meeting today, that's an immigrant-started business. The COVID vaccine that allows us to gather and not still be under a pandemic, essentially discovered by immigrants, right? So all of these new things just create vibrancy in the economy. The other thing that immigrants do, and this is one of the great untold stories about immigration that I hope people get it. It's that immigrants increase the amount of investment in your community. So without investment, you can't create jobs, you can't create new businesses. So investment is the beginning of economic growth. And immigrants increase investment in two ways. One is they act as a magnet for investment from their home countries, right? So if you have Germans that move to the U.S., German firms are more likely to invest in the U.S. and, the same for any other nationality. The other is that in starting businesses, they put their own capital into the economy or they raise capital from other sources to grow that business, right? Whether it's venture capital, private equity, or whatever grows a business. And so the seeds of economic growth are often planted by immigrants through the investment they attract.